Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Curious Realm. Chris Jordan here, coming to you live from the Luxor in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, for the 2023 Stairway to the Stars conference, brought to you by the Gaia Network, Fade to Black, and Lila Quantum Tech. We will be talking to all kinds of researchers, everything from UFO, UAP, to disclosure topics, people who channel beings from other realms, people who talk with galactic ambassadors. We will be talking with Bigfoot researchers, all kinds of things, a huge number of researchers, authors, vendors here. Let's go ahead and hop on in and see what it's all about. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the official coverage of the Stairway to the Stars conference here at the Luxor in Las Vegas. We are here with our good friend and guest, Kathleen Ball. She is the author of the new book, A Grail Quest, Discovery of a Knights Templar Cave in Brazil. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Always glad to have you on the show. I'm glad to see you here. You've had a great response at your table.
Absolutely.
Here at the first day. It has been fantastic. So tell everybody a little bit about your research and how you came to researching the Knights Templar to begin with.
Well, it basically started with an NDE in 1990. I should say it jump-started with that. I believe that I had been on some sort of a quest my entire life, but it jump-started in 1990 when I was 33 years old, and I had a near-death experience. And from that time forward, I started researching just all esoteric belief systems. And, you know, I had been a sort of a mentor of Leonardo da Vinci. I learned how to draw from his line. I used his line. And I found out that he had been involved with King Francis I in France and had been exposed to a lot of esoteric knowledge, right? So that really spurred it for me, and I dug in. I started studying the Palais des Sions and just all these different Masons, and I bumped into the Templars, right? Okay. Well, so in 2006 or 2003, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, one of them came out, and I read that, and then of course the Da Vinci Code came out not long after that, and then the film came out, and I was in Italy when that film came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was over there delivering a portrait that I had done of Leonardo da Vinci to the Vinci Museum and for their permanent collection. Oh, wow. And taking a tour of students all through Europe, following the path of Leonardo da Vinci. So that led me into Amboise, France, which is where he died. And I found out that King Francis I was into all these esoteric, beliefs, and that they had brought in, he was married to Catherine Medici, right? Yep. And so the Medicis got all of this stuff from the Holy Land, right? They brought back all this stuff. And I don't know if they were affiliated with the Templars or what.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if the Medicis were one of the first families to actively own the Shroud of Turin, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they may have. It's rumored that they did.
Yeah.
And which is the line of thought that leads people to believe that that's how Leonardo da Vinci got a hold of it.
Or had possibly even made it.
It's
he didn't one of the many hypotheses.
He didn't make the material itself. That's
the image on the material.
Yeah. But he may have, he may have used a photographic process of some sort and actually done it, and I wouldn't be surprised because he was a brilliant man.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so he was really kind of the one that led me to the Templars eventually. And fast forward to 2009, I went over to France. We ended up in Dome, France. I was given the keys to the dungeon where they held the Templars. Wow. And from 1307 to 1314, and photographed all of the graffiti that was in the dungeon, right? So that was the information that fast forward 6 years later, when I actually went to Brazil and found the cave completely by accident, synchronicity, I was able to identify it because all the same symbols were in the cave. Yeah. All the same graffiti was in the cave.
Well, and even your work as a master in art history, things like that, like you have a different realm of a different way of looking at architecture, a different way of looking at the way it melds with art, and even with the graffiti that people put places. And once again, to see the matching graffiti from so many different locations, not only across Central Europe, or I guess Eastern Europe, Western Europe, but all the way over to the New World.
Right.
That's pretty incredible to be able to see the similarities.
Well, you do, because as an artist, you're trained to see, and most people don't really see. They really don't. But as an artist, I notice every single detail that is going on. You know, I had a photographic memory almost entirely until I was in my early 30s. And so I had that ability to capture, you know, details everywhere. And so I started doing comparative studies, really, you know, with spiritual belief systems and India and Tibet and Africa and Egypt and Native American, North American, Native and Southern American. And I even found some belief systems of the Ainu in Japan, all the same thing. They were all teaching the same thing, which is the alchemical process that you go through. So my book, The Grail Quest, is basically my alchemical process.
Interesting.
You know, that's basically what it is.
Well, and you know, not many people realize that a lot of alchemy is symbolism. It was all written in encrypted ways. When COVID first started, I probably had about a good 8-9 month just deep dive into various alchemical texts on my tablet, downloading them, purchasing them, things like that. And the two things that struck me were specifically the philosophic background of it, as well as the religious background of it, and the idea of it. Once you start reading it, it wasn't necessarily the search for how to turn lead to gold. It was how to turn this lead to gold, and how to purify your own self.
Absolutely.
And it's even to look into numerous of the locations that the Knights Templar have that are quite obviously places of initiation, built specifically for that. And when you start looking at the symbology that is at those locations. We were talking just last night, you and I, over dinner about Rosslyn Chapel. And the idea that there is an entire piece of music written from cymatic symbols that are on columns in the chapel that had been there for thousands of years. It took somebody who knew what cymatics was to go, hey, that kind of looks familiar to a solfeggio frequency.
Right. Exactly.
And going through frequency ranges and actually finding the exact same pattern that is tied to a note in the musical scale.
That's right. And it all comes down to music because it's all frequency. Everything is frequency. Everything. The only difference between your hand and this table is the frequency at which it's vibrating.
That's right. The
only difference between this dimension that we are inhabiting and other dimensions, like the angelic dimension, I learned this in my near-death experience, is the frequency at which the entities are vibrating at.
I heard a fantastic explanation from somebody at the MUFON conference this last year that I have just lifted, because it was such a beautifully simplistic explanation of three-dimensional objects cast a two-dimensional shadow.
Right.
Fourth-dimensional objects cast a three-dimensional shadow. And that just logically made so much entire sense. Because, regularly, you've been on the show before. I talk regularly about the fact that, yes, everything is all frequency. That we see and hear a very minimal slice of the entire spectrum. And to think that what we see and hear is processing all of it is fallacy.
But that wasn't always the case.
No.
If you go back, the ancient Egyptians documented it, and many cultures have documented that there was a time in history, often referred to as the Lemurian time, which preceded Atlantis, where we experienced all of life, what the Egyptians called it 360 senses. Right? That's the terminology, the Commission, the ancient Egyptians used. But basically what that means is that you embody everything that exists outside of you, so you know it innately.
Yeah.
You know the existence and the makeup of a star. You know the existence and you understand the cat, the dog, the dinosaur, whatever it is that is in your world. You understand it completely. And your senses are opened up.
Oh, yeah.
So we're now coming out of the Kali Yuga up into the Dwapara Yuga. That's one way of explaining it.
Sure.
We are returning to a time when we will be able to enable us to use all those senses again. That's why there's an increase in telepathy. That's why there's, if you and I are having this conversation,
Yeah.
we would not have had this conversation 25 years ago.
It would have been a much harder conversation to ply. That's for certain.
Absolutely.
There has been a rapidity with which this revelation, I think, has come upon mankind here in the last decade, to see the acceptance of so many different fields of study that for the longest time have been thrown into the catch-all Kleenex bin called paranormal, where even many people would say that this would burgeon on that because of some of the concepts talked about in it. But when you look at ancient civilizations, Minoa, Egypt, ancient Greece, all of these people had an intense, intimate knowledge of frequency, sound, and actively used these things in their religious spaces.
And not only that, but they used them to manipulate the elements. And they were able to literally liquefy, because they understood the makeup. Right, the subatomic makeup.
Yeah.
So they were able to liquefy stones, which is what I believe is how the stones were put together in Egypt and also at Machu Picchu.
Yep. Where it looks like they've been melted and reconstituted.
They literally have those those little knobs.
Yep.
Those, to me, as a sculptor, right, I immediately identified those as keys.
Yeah. Mold keys.
Right, mold keys. To keep that from slipping, right, within the mold itself.
Yeah.
So, immediately I knew what that was. And so immediately I knew that was the reason why they're so close together. That's why you couldn't get a piece of paper through there, because they were molded right into each other.
And even the process of molding, just to talk about how, whether you're talking about molding a ring, whether you're talking about molding a coin, whether you're talking about molding concrete, these things, the methods in which it's done have been pretty well unchanged, aside from some modernization of materials, aside from, look, we have a better lubricant to coat the inside of a mold with so that we don't break as many pieces whenever we pull it apart.
Well, that's
things like
determined
that
by the materials that you use.
Sure.
And that's subjective. It just depends on the materials that you use. They use different materials.
Yep.
They had a conglomerate, a cement type.
Yeah.
And that used in the Bosnian period.
Yep.
That we can't even reproduce today.
We just figured out the chemical makeup of Roman concrete.
Exactly.
Just nailed
Recently.
it. Just within the last 6 months, they have announced, yes, we have confirmed the actual makeup.
Right.
We have confirmed it. It's taken us that long to figure out how Roman concrete was made, because they live on an isthmus. They're right up the road from Mount Etna, right down the road from another volcano, they regularly have issues. It's funny how modern buildings are almost all but destroyed in these earthquakes in Italy, but the Colosseum still stands.
Exactly. And so, so does Machu Picchu, and so does, all these places that I've traveled all over the world. They're still standing, They're still standing.
Yeah. No, that's all right. The microphone was falling down there.
Okay.
But yeah.
So, I knew immediately when I went to these places initially. I didn't know how they did it, but I suspected it was some type of mold process because of the keys. And the more I travel, the more I'm convinced that that's how they did it.
Well, and the Templars specifically, even before they were the good poor knights and even before they had their apostolic blessing from the Pope and their charge from the Pope to form an actual order,
Right.
were a conglomerate of knights who went about and found these buildings and found these building methods.
Right. And you find them all over the world, and they're, not always attributed to the Templars, but they are Templar, and you can tell that they're Templar. Timothy Hogan was just talking about this in Ethiopia, and I mean all over there. India, they're in Egypt. They were everywhere. They traveled all over the globe. And so that's what my next book is going to be about, the Templar agenda.
Yeah. Well, and not many people realize that in addition to master bankers, master builders, they were amazing nauticists. They knew the ocean.
Yeah,
they knew how to traverse the ocean. And,
Absolutely.
And just about every trade route out there they were a part of.
And secretly.
Yeah.
And they did it secretly. When the Templars from Portugal initially went into South America, they called it Veracruz, which means the true cross. And they told everyone when they came back into Europe that it was an island, so that nobody else would go over there and bother with an island.
Yeah. Yeah, because if there's a mainland, then there's trade. There's riches that you can go mine.
Yeah,
things
there's
like
gold,
that.
there's silver, there's blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And the whole time they were bringing back gold from my cave.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, let's get into that a little bit, because once you've actually discovered the cave in Brazil, exactly what were the Templars using that for? Because you actively went and interviewed local tribes, things like that. They had a relationship.
Yes, they did.
With the local tribe.
Yes, they did. And it's with my research, I have found that the Amazonian tribes actually either escorted or in some way accompanied them from Bahia, from the coast of Brazil, all the way into central Brazil, which is where Alto Paraíso is, which is where I found the cave. So, and that route actually is supposed to go all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And recently, within the last 2 years, the Templars themselves have done a pilgrimage, and they have traversed that route that started in Central America, went up into Bahia and across, and there's Mason marks along this trail.
Oh, wow.
Templar Mason marks.
Wow.
So, so they were doing this. If my research is correct, and I'm still, of course, always looking for better ways to establish the dating, but so far, some of the symbols that are inside my cave are found in Peniche, and they were constructed in 1190.
Oh, wow.
The buildings that they're found on. So this graffiti, that's Templar graffiti, was actually etched into the sides of these buildings in 1190. And
so that before the time of persecution.
Oh, yeah, far. And I really believe that they were going over there before the time of the persecution. I don't know how far back yet, but it could be anywhere between 1190 from my research to 1315. Anywhere in between there. With the symbols that I have found and dated in other areas, those same symbols that are in the cave tell me that they had to have been visiting back and forth between 1190 and 1315.
Wow.
So, the cave is a gold mine.
Interesting.
Yeah, the cave is a gold mine, so they were bringing gold back and forth from Brazil into Portugal for, how long? Hundreds of years, possibly.
Yeah.
And I believe this is why King Dinas, in the 1300s, while they were being persecuted, supported them and actually built a nautical school in Peniche.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Right.
And an unbeknownst nautical school, right? One
It was totally on the QT, and I think that was done so that they could secretly travel back and forth, even as the Knights of Christ, which they later became, back and forth to Brazil, and they could continue to bring that gold back.
Yeah. And there were a couple points in this that I think really bear witness. The fact that, once again, not many people realize that there was a prolonged persecution of the Knights Templar.
Oh my God!
It didn't just like, hey, you know what? these guys don't want to help me persecute the Jewish people. They don't want to help me, wipe out my debt to them as the King of France. It wasn't an overnight thing that happened where just suddenly Jacques de Molay was taken down and burned. They were persecuted for years.
Yeah, they were
that.
persecuted. Well, you have to remember, okay, so all the kings were broke. All the kings in Europe were broke because they had supported the Holy Wars. Okay, when the Templars lost that was their downfall. When they lost that last battle in 1290, they came back to Europe and they had no use as far as the kings were concerned.
Yeah.
Right? They
weren't protecting
crusaders.
pilgrims anymore.
Right, right. And they had become so powerful. They were the bankers, and they owned massive amounts of land all through Europe, right? So that's a threat to royalty. They see that as a threat. And then you add that to the fact that King Philip owed them tremendous amount of money, a debt left over from his father, and he couldn't pay it back. So the first thing he did was take all the Jews' property and money and everything they had, and guess where they went? They went to Portugal, under the protection of the Templars. So did the Cathars, so did the Moors, so did Islam. They were not enemies in Portugal. Everyone was accepted. It was a
and
sovereign.
as a matter of fact, once again, the Knights Templar rightly refused the King of France when he was like, "Hey, why don't you help me roust these people out?" And we'll just take their money and that'll wipe your debt clean. And they're like, I don't think so.
So think about for a minute, you're King Philip, right? And you owe these guys a bunch of money. And not only that, but they're also protecting people that you want to demonize.
That you want to persecute and demonize.
So you are directly a threat to what they're saying and what they want to put across to their, to their people.
And to the king's sovereignty at that point.
Because you are actually damaging and potentially destroying their sovereign nation, right? So the solution to that was to start a whole bunch of propaganda. That propaganda had to have been started probably 20, 30, who knows how many years before the actual downfall of the Templars. But the church's, their interest in bringing the Templars down was a totally different interest. They were becoming more powerful than the church. And they were now in Portugal. They were taking in all these people.
That was also pre-celibacy. And not a lot of people realize that. The church wasn't always a celibate institution with its priests.
Right.
So when you're talking about a priest being a knight who's tied to a royal family, now you're talking about an obfuscation of whether or not that property might belong to, pardon my language, folks, but maybe a bastard son, or whether the land still belongs to the church.
Right.
It became a real quick battle of title and who owned property rights. Was it the church's property? Did it belong to this family who built the church and who funded the church through the Knights Templar because their son was a Knights Templar? And so, there was their firmly vested interest in the name of the church who had blessed them to begin with for the Crusades to say, we'll go along with you because we see how title to our land may be obfuscated at this point as well.
Well, and then the fact that they were protecting the bloodline of Mary Magdalene.
Sure.
And so you add that to the mix. And the church was demonizing Mary Magdalene at that time, all the way from the 1300s. They started demonizing, or back to 300, excuse me. Back to 300 AD. Constantine started, doing that. And he actually deleted the Book of Mary Magdalene from the canonized Bible.
Along with numerous.
Along with a very whole variety of things. But anyway, so you have these people that have become really powerful, right? They have thousands of members. They're the bankers. They're loaning the church money. They're loaning all the king's money. They're loaning. They control everything plus the land. Okay. So, and then they're saving and they're protecting all these people that you want everybody to believe.
Well, and not just that, they are sworn into not only knighthood but an order, and at that point, their religious order supersedes their familial tie.
Absolutely.
So it's like awesome that I'm part of this ruling royal family, but my loyalties lie here with the Templars.
Right.
Not even with the church.
Right.
With the Templars before anything else.
Exactly.
So
you have that. So they want to stop them.
Yeah.
Right? So they they buddy up with King Philip, and the deed is done, and then they want to make everybody else believe it too.
Yep.
So they hit up the king in England and Scotland and everywhere, trying to get them to get on board to demonize the Templars. So at that point, they went underground.
yeah.
And there's a lot of people that believe that the Templars stopped at that point. But in Portugal was the last holdout. The Inquisition did not get into Portugal until the 1500s.
Yeah.
And when they did, you know where they went. They went right straight to the Templars' headquarters in Tomar and took over the Convento Cristo.
Yeah.
They dug up the Grand Masters underneath the chapel of Maria do Olival, which is dedicated to Mary Magdalene. They dug them up when nobody knows what happened to them at that point. So they had some sort of vested interest in not only annihilating the Templars, but annihilating every memory of the Templars, and
even to the point of desecration.
Absolutely. The Jesuits, I actually found books in the Rosicrucian Library that I researched that that say that what happened in South America was actually, it was beyond, it was genocide of the Templars and any Masons. They sent Jesuit bands of people into every single country in South America to track down and murder Templar descendants and Masons.
Wow.
And I have a book in the Rosicrucian Library that's this thick. Every single chapter is about another country in South America where they did this.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty powerful.
Wow.
So they not only wanted to, they wanted everybody to forget about the Templars completely.
Yeah.
But then there was that prophecy that they were going to return in 700 years. And they did. And I was actually present for that procession in Tomar when they reunified. They had a huge procession. They all signed a pact. And they had this amazing procession. I was there. It actually brought tears to my eyes. I was actually weeping as I'm walking from the Convento Cristo down into Tomar to the Church of St. John, and then down to the Chapel of Maria do Olival, where they lit the cross in finale of this procession. It was probably about a 3-hour process, but I was literally weeping as I'm photographing and filming this whole thing, because it was just so powerful to be a part of that reunification. Seeing the Templars reunify.
Yeah.
It was so powerful.
Absolutely. Well, especially with all the work that you've done researching into them, everything else, and to see the fact that there is a modern Templar movement, and it's happening right at the same time that just about this turnover of humanity is happening. It's pretty interesting to see those two things line up.
Right.
That even right now, we're changing as a species. The way that we're connected, the way that we think.
And sometimes it's slower, and then sometimes there's periods that are actually jump-started.
Yeah.
Our evolutionary process is jump-started. We've seen this in our history.
Yeah.
And we're at one of those. We're moving into a new paradigm. But it's our natural evolutionary process as humans, as the species that we are, to continue to evolve. And we will continue to evolve infinitely, which is hard to grasp, but we will. And now that we're moving back up into the Dwapara Yuga, we're moving in with we've now matured and expanded our mental capacity, which we did not have before this yuga began.
Yeah.
This yuga has been all about developing the mental and the material plane. We've sunk as far into matter as we can sink.
Yeah.
It's basically the story of Sophia sinking into matter and then rising back up and being reunited with the Christo, right? We're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And again, that is a description of the alchemical process.
Yep, and precisely half of the initiation, right? And
Absolutely.
And the message of masonry, the message. I mean, one of my favorites, and I want to say it might be is it the 23rd? I think it might be the 23rd rank of masonry, where you literally find out everything that you've learned before is a lie.
33rd.
Is it the 33rd? Okay. Because I thought that there was one within the Royal Ark before that where the moment of revelation happened.
Right,
but
and it was the same age that Jesus, was 33 when he began. And the same age I was when I had my near death.
Yeah.
Interesting on that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, where can everybody go to find out more? Where can they go to watch the Templars in Brazil movie? You're working on the second edition of that right now.
Yeah.
That is hugely exciting.
Right, very exciting. But they can go to Gaia. They can watch it on Gaia TV, or they can stream it through that same Gaia thing. They can also go to my website, which is www.templarsinbrazil.com, and get updates on this book that's out, because it's available on Amazon.
Yep.
And then they can also find out about the next book that's coming out and the next film that's coming out, and watch the trailer that is already out for the next film.
Awesome. And you also have a tour that you're working on as well.
Yes,
Let everybody know where they can go to find out about that, where they can go to sign up,
They'll
everything
be able to go
else.
to my website once we get it uploaded to the website.
Yep.
But it's going to be in October of 2024, and it's a Grail Quest tour.
Okay.
We're going to be going to all the sites that I know about in Portugal and in France, and we're going to be basically going through the alchemical process.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Kathleen, thank you as always for coming on the show.
Yeah,
I always
welcome.
appreciate our conversations. Your
Yeah,
wealth of
I do
knowledge
too.
on this is absolutely amazing and fantastic. I can't wait to hear you speak tonight. Can't wait to hear you speak on Sunday. So
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it too.
absolutely. Stay tuned, everybody, for continuing coverage from Stairway to the Stars right here at the Luxor in Las Vegas. We'll be right back after these commercial messages with more from the Curious Realm and Stairway to the Stars right after this. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Curious Realm's continuing coverage of Stairway to the Stars here at the Luxor in Las Vegas. We have with us right now Susan Walters. She is a solfeggio artist. Myself being a healing music musician, I am all about solfeggio frequencies and always trying to get people to understand that frequency is everything, quite literally.
Yes.
Everything. Tell us a little bit, how did you first begin making your art, and how did you come to the world of solfeggio frequencies to begin with?
The art actually started, it all goes back to I had near-death experiences as a very small child at the ages of 4, and then a second one at the age of 6, where I was introduced to some of my own personal angels and saw them all the time after that. Though I wasn't inspired to do anything with that until the late 90s when I started seeing everybody else's angels, and that's what developed into the angel portraits.
Okay.
And then in 2011 is when I was introduced to the solfeggio frequencies.
All right.
And originally from one of the local healers where I live in Kansas City, and he gave me some music that said, based on the solfeggio, and said, what can you create with this? And I had just started.
Excuse me, my friend, we're in the middle of recording.
I had no idea.
Thank you.
Sorry.
But he asked me, because I was just starting to play with mandalas. And so the first few started from inspired by his music, but then I just did some research and finding out there's actually 9 sets of 9 frequencies.
Yeah.
And very few people really understand that. And then, so I didn't realize when I just created half a dozen that I was going to end up creating 81 mandalas,
Yeah.
taking 7-year, being
Wow.
a 7-year project. And I just finished creating these, which is a full deck of all 81 mandalas with all the information about how that specific frequency can help us.
Incredible.
And it literally help us, realign and reactivate our DNA. It can, there's so many uses and healing properties of these frequencies.
Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing. It seems like I learn something new about them all the time.
It took me a long time musically to actively put my frequency music out there. I tell people all the time in interviews that for the longest time it was a dirty secret, because I used the frequencies in a different way in my music. It was normally like, what frequencies make people uncomfortable? Things like that. So if I was writing a piece of music that had a certain theme, whether it was like fallen angels, things like that, I would use frequencies in the background to emote response from the listener.
Right.
And whenever somebody would be like, wow, I don't know what it was, but in the middle of that, there was like, I don't know, like this weird tension. It was like, awesome, mission accomplished, But it wasn't until years later, even though I used binaural beats and frequencies for my own use, it was years before I started using them for actual therapeutic music. So.
Well, and sometimes it's the things that make us uncomfortable that bring to light something we need to work on to heal. Like, to be honest, orange is not my favorite color, to say the least. Even though you'll find it prevalently in my art, because you need to balance, all color, but I don't wear that color. I usually don't eat things that are that that orange. But what chakra do I need to work on?
You're orange.
Uh-huh.
You're orange.
Yes.
And it's interesting the way that happens, and the way that things just kind of work out once you start following that path, and once you start using them. Now, how frequently do you do? Because you also do readings.
Yes.
And soul portraits as well. Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, the angel portraits are where I draw one of your personal angels.
Okay.
And it takes about an hour to do those. So I'm not doing them this weekend, but I can do them via Zoom.
Okay.
And I have learned to do readings with the cards, which it was never my intention was to do that, but I was in an event much smaller than this, but similar in energy, and the promoter literally sat somebody in front of me and said, "Okay, you're going to do readings with your cards."
Wow. Okay.
Okay. Well,
Were they originally made for readings, or were they more made for personal meditation use?
They were always originally made for personal meditation tools.
Okay.
I have adopted to using them to something I call soul growth readings.
Okay.
So they're not the typical reading about what's going on with the boyfriend or the job, or it's about your soul's journey, what things that kind of where you've been and where you're going, and and bringing up tools to help you evolve into what you want to become.
Okay, interesting. Because for me, it's been a strange journey to things like that. Recently, I guess it was last year at the Near Death Association conference, I had somebody do some energy work on me that I've had numerous Reiki sessions in my life, numerous meditation sessions with people, crystal meditation, massage therapy, all kinds of things. But specifically the work that he did to realign things spiritually for me was really phenomenal and interesting. And for me, people who can see into that realm can see. Personally, that was a visitation from my grandfather that he helped facilitate, and helped me release all kinds of trauma from the loss of my grandfather. It was a huge point in my life when he died, and a huge changing point for me that for some reason I held on to for the longest time, for no good reason.
Right.
I was in 7th grade, like I had anything to do with that. But for some reason I held on to it, and we don't really we don't realize frequently, like you were saying with the color orange, even though we're tending our garden, what we're actively tilling over while we're tilling our garden, that still takes root.
Yes.
And lives under the soil.
Exactly.
You know, and with your work specifically with angel portraitry, things like that, how do you help people, I guess, come to a point of healing through that?
Well, the portraits start out as a major, almost, some people have actually used the word portal, that they're an angelic portal to connect with their angels on a deeper level. And one of the things, if people look at my work on my website, they'll notice that the angel's arms are almost always outstretched. It's because they're ready to exchange energy and embrace whenever that is needed. And whenever we, ask for that help, because they really do want us to ask for help, because that gives them permission to help us.
Well, I love the way that you said permission, because that is one of the things that we regularly discuss on our show, whether it be alien abductions, whether it be paranormal experiences, things like that. There is a part of consent that is in there within us that allows that to happen, whether it be the fact that you are searching for that, and I always caveat people with that on my show, like, I understand we're all searching for something, but be careful what you go out searching for, all right? There's all kinds of things lurking out there, but it's more the fact of, are you aligned with the proper intention of what you're searching for? Even whenever I do, I wouldn't say that I read tarot, more than I would say that I meditate with tarot. And that will be the fact that, much like cards like this, I will pull a card and start looking at the symbology in the card and what the symbols mean to what's going on in my life.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to scry the future. I'm not trying to read it like tea leaves and find out what stocks to hit next week, things like that. I'm using it more as a tool to guide myself through my life.
What can help us grow and expand?
The answer is going to change.
Yeah.
That answer will change daily depending on where I am and what I'm aligned to. And I think that's a big issue that a lot of people have with things like this, things like tarot, is that it's almost like they want a definitive answer instead of a direction.
Yes. And I'm more about direction.
Yeah.
Because when it comes down to it, I can't do your homework for you.
You can't. Yeah. You can't even technically come in and till the garden for them.
No.
Nor can a therapist.
I can sometimes hand you tools.
Absolutely.
And give you maybe a little bit of guidance, but it's still up to you personally if you're going to take that guidance or not. Well, if you're going to pick up that tool, it's going to make it easier for you to till the garden.
And whether or not you're gonna actively give that permission for the guidance to be given. Once again, like you're saying, the angels have their arms open. They're waiting for you.
Exactly.
So, and it's interesting to me how many, because the concept of angelic work and angels itself goes beyond religion.
Yes, and they're here for because they're really truly here to help us on our journey, because that's who we've sat down with before we took physical form and go, I want to learn this, I want to experience that. And so they're the ones keeping us on track with those, and sometimes they're the ones that give us the spiritual clue by 4.
Oh yeah, no, you gotta have that. There's got to be someone to give it to you. But once again, you've got to be willing to contribute to that system.
Yes.
The way I always put it to kids that I taught religion and philosophy to was, the universe is like a slinky.
Yeah.
Tons of potential energy locked up in that spring. But you have to push it. It's not just going to slink on its own. You have to start the sling. Once you start it, it'll keep going on its own.
Right.
But you have to push the initial push into things. You have to be the one to say, okay, I need help.
Right.
I need help. I need some kind of guidance. You have to be the one that's open to that to begin with. So the fact that you are out there, not only with these cards, but with the angel portraitry is absolutely awesome. Let everybody know where they can go to get a hold of their copy of cards, where they can go to contact you to have an actual Zoom session and have angel portraitry done.
The easiest place would be straight to my website, which is susanwalterart.com. And so I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and a social media person, unbeknownst to me, had put me on TikTok too.
All right. Awesome.
But,
well, looking forward to it. Thank you so much. You've been bustling here at the show. You've been more than busy. And
yeah, it's been crazy, and we're having so much fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
While you are online checking out all of the amazing work, stop on by. CuriousRealm.com is the website. That's where you can find, like, subscribe. That's where you can share all of the episodes, everybody. Stay tuned through these commercial breaks. We'll be right back with more coverage live here from Stairway to the Stars right after this. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Curious Realm's continuing coverage of the Stairway to the Stars conference here in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada at the Luxor. We're here with our good friend Brad Olson. He is the author of The Future Esoteric, Modern Esoteric, and Beyond Esoteric. He's been on the show, God, probably a good 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
You were recently giving a presentation I saw on Lost Atlantis in Antarctica. Let's get into that a little bit, because I've loved your Antarctica exploration for years to begin with, but the concept of Antarctica being part of Atlantis has been something that I have considered for a long, long time.
Great question, Chris. And of course, this is what everybody wants to know is, could there be remnants of Atlantis or a high civilization other than this modern age? Because Antarctica was only discovered in 1821. So all the bases there and all the modern equipment and buildings are all of the last 100 years or so. So if they were to find, say, megalithic constructions, pyramids poking through the ice, or giants, or megafauna, megaflora, well, that's a game changer, and that really changes everything when it comes to reinterpreting who we are on this planet and how long high-tech civilizations have been here.
Well, and how many high-tech civilizations have been here in addition to that. That's whenever we have Jared Murphy on, that's always a huge topic of conversation, because unfortunately so many people think that it has to be aliens.
Right.
When humans are incredibly ingenious, and yes, we've had numerous iterations of humanity over many times and lost civilizations. We've lost knowledge, regained knowledge. Even the idea that the Pythagorean theorem did not start with Pythagoras.
Right.
And it was originally part of, Babylon, things like that, or Sumeria rather. Incredible to think about, and to know that these other civilizations built on others,
Right, and that's the whole concept of the Osirian Empire, which was the beginning of Egypt, was a remnant of ancient Atlantis. And they took their knowledge of, say, for example, how to build a great pyramid and make it a power device, a ram pump, and so many other inventions all in one, that you're looking at a civilization that had reached its high point, reached its apex early on, as is evident with the pyramid constructions, and degraded in times past. Usually history works the other way around. You start at a primitive end and then you build up and perfect what it is you're working on, like a pyramid.
Yeah.
But here we have the oldest structures, and the oldest megaliths around the world are the ones that go way, way back.
And have extreme precision of perfection. Like
all
not only in construction, but in geometric placement on the Earth and geologic placement on the Earth as well.
That's the real fascinating thing about the Great Pyramid. And in my book, Modern Esoteric, I have a map of the Great Pyramid layout as they are seen overlooking the whole delta of the Mediterranean Ocean. And here it is. And then you can see here, Chris, so here they are. in the light.
Yeah.
Just below the delta of the Nile, there's the Great Pyramids, there's modern Cairo. But look at this, how they are the exact center of all the continental land masses on Earth.
Yeah.
So it's as if the people who built them had a knowledge of what the Earth looked like from above.
Yeah. And even whenever you start looking at adjunct civilizations that built pyramids as well, when you look at the pyramids in China that are in just about the same formation.
Right.
When you look at the pyramids of Teotihuacan, which are in just about the same formation as the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yeah.
What do they all have in common?
Yeah. And
Well, they're two big pyramids and then one slightly off.
Yeah.
You would think they would do them all in a row, but why is the one slightly off? And that's the Belt of Orion.
Yeah.
And that is a commonality that they were also stargazers and worked with the alignments of the planets and the sun and moon.
And you know, that's a huge part of it, because especially when you're talking ancient civilizations, because whether it was farming, whether it was the seasons, whether it was what was available to hunt at the time, all of that was firmly available by stars, constellations, everything that, as opposed to us now. I even make the comparison regularly of like my great-grandparents. Like, heck, my grandparents grew up with horses and oil lamps. When the sun went down, it was dark. Like, it was dark.
Dark.
They didn't need a farmer's almanac to know when to put seed in the ground.
Right.
They knew just by the positioning of the stars and the weather change that, hey, we should probably get some seed in.
Yeah.
You know, it's about that time of year.
Yep.
And we have definitely, within 100 years, have lost that connection to the earth and the way that operates.
Yeah. And
It doesn't take that long for us to literally forget.
right. And or relearn,
Yeah.
which is, I think, in the case of building the pyramids. Of course, out here in North America, we also have the tell of the seasons in archaeoastronomy in the form of the medicine wheels.
Yeah.
And I had the great opportunity going out when I was researching this book.
Oh, wow.
And seeing a whole bunch of them, including Bighorn medicine wheel, and that's one of the color photos. I'll flip to that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't have this book.
You don't have this
I got to
book.
get this book.
And there I stayed out on summer solstice 2001. And
Wow.
exactly the sunrise. You can see how it illuminates the heel stone all the way across the main cairn. There's the sun rising right over there. Perfect alignment.
Yeah.
So they knew exactly when the solstice was going to come. And you can see how important that would be to primitive people, because you got to know when to plant your seed.
Absolutely.
But you may, in this case, up in northern Wyoming, when you need to migrate.
Yep.
And to have that knowledge as a shaman or someone who could interpret these things, that'd be a very important position in society.
Even as a solo or hunting in a pair or anything like that, to go out and gather food for a 3-4 day hunt, something like that, and bring your way back. I mean, that is one of the examples that I give all the time of the property that Dennis Stone owns, America's Stonehenge.
I've been there many times,
and the alignments there, because when you go there, even historically, when the settlers came and found it and asked the local Indians, hey, where did this come from? They were like, I don't know, that was here when we got here. It was something that they knew about, but they didn't even know who built it.
What they were like, and many times the Native Americans would say they were here when we got here, and we just utilized them. Why wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, and also the fact of when you're looking especially at Native American tribes in the Northeast, things like that, they weren't necessarily full shelter builders.
Right.
You know, they didn't build pueblos like they did in the Southwest, things like that. There are a few things up around the front where obviously there were some encampments, but it's not like it was a settlement where they lived or anything like that. It seems much more like it's somewhere that they may have traversed. Maybe they used the cave structures there, the
Did you mean in
beacomb
America's
structures.
Stonehenge?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, a lot of those structures are clearly megalithic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're huge.
Yeah, they're ginormous.
And
with
like I said,
capstones.
for them to have used it as maybe a hunting locker, to roll a stone in front of, keep your food there, that kind of stuff. Keep your kills there.
These are a
what
bunch of
have you.
pictures I took.
Yeah.
At America's Stonehenge. You can see
And-
quite clearly megalithic design, bee home,
Yeah.
beehive chambers,
Yeah.
and
amazing alignments.
And alignments all
amazing
over.
alignments. Like
Yeah.
while I was there, I actually pointed out a lunar alignment that he didn't know about with my lunar finding app.
Yeah.
Because we were there. I was looking at all the stuff with the sun alignments, and I was like, let's look at a lunar alignment. And I went, and it almost right there to the day. And he was like, wow, send that to me. Because I guess they had never considered lunar alignments
that's
as
great
well.
You know all this.
You know,
And
but
you know what? It's my gift to you today, Chris.
Oh,
I'm
thank
giving you a signed copy.
I appreciate that, Brad. It's one of those that, once again, we are
That's for you.
so entirely ready to forget things as a
Yeah.
humanity.
Yeah.
And so many of these things go back so far that it's almost undeniable. Even the work of Graham Hancock recently, his series,
Yep.
things like that. It's funny to me to hear people poo-poo the work. When he is not a researcher of these things, he's just a journalist.
Right.
So he's just following the same paper trail, same clue trail that any journalist would to break a story.
Right.
It just happens to be that these are the commonalities between things. Like, I'm
Yep.
just pointing those out as a journalist.
As are we, when you look at it, what do? We're just collecting information, we're researchers, and we're piecing together this mosaic, which is ancient history. And when you look at all the pieces and around the world, you're seeing that there is a sophistication of knowledge in primitive people, both in building design, plus in these alignments. And now that we have confirmed megalithic structures with alignments here in North America,
Yeah.
that again, I think is a game changer.
It really is, especially whenever you start looking at, people like Kathleen Ball's work right across the way over there, talking about Templars in America.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
things like that, because they absolutely, whenever they traveled, made connections with the locals.
Right.
To learn those esoteric things, to learn
did.
things that they even weren't aware of that added to their realm of knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why I love your titles, Beyond Esoteric.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think people have lost the concept of the term esoteric.
We're bringing it
and
back.
the idea that, there is a hidden realm of knowledge out there, be it symbologically, culturally, what have you. These things exist throughout time and throughout history and throughout cultures. And it's very interesting to me how there are so many commonalities between India, Mayan, North American. It's just all over the place.
Uncanny how much
It is.
there is. Yeah, if you're paying attention, it's right there, out hidden in plain sight, as they say.
Yeah. So what is the new book about?
Well, it's going to be the fourth in the Esoteric series. It is based on my exploration of Antarctica 5 years ago. I was on a sailboat down there for 26 days, and I'm even in talks with film crew and financiers about going back with a film crew and doing a documentary.
Wow.
Going to places like New Schwabenland, the German claim, and I know where
Yep.
the base 211 is, to explore around there and go out to the Conan base, which in my presentation here at conferences I talk about one of the 3 known motherships in Antarctica below the ice. They've been known for over 50 years, and they're called the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. They've got names.
Wow. Now let's get into that for a minute, because there is the infamous no-fly zone
Right.
over Antarctica,
Yeah.
where there are apparently anomalies, all kinds of things.
Right.
And yeah, there is, of course, the concept that there are motherships under the ice in Antarctica.
Right. And this is one of the most best evidence confirmed sites down there, and it happens to be a West German research base seasonally. And in 2013, they were doing an excavation on what looks like about a 1/4 mile long giant radiator. Fins are coming out of the ice, and they're pulling it away, and then over another spot they're pulling out something orange and metallic, and that could be an entrance down into the ship.
Wow.
And then every year since then, it covers over, but it looks like they held up the fins with some kind of circus poles, is how I think of it. And maybe a heavy-duty tarp, because it just kind of looks like the very top of a giant circus tent now.
Okay.
So perhaps preserving it in that way.
Preserving the dig site,
Yeah,
so to speak.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. And to think about that, once again, the fact of that is one of the oldest land masses on Earth.
Yeah.
Once again, not discovered until the last 100 years and hardly explored. There's of course the Nazi bases that existed down there, Operation High Jump,
Yep.
all that kind of good stuff.
That's what I'm putting in my new book. And then hopefully another trip
Wow.
down there as well.
Wow, that is incredible, man. I cannot wait for that. I want to thank
Thanks.
you for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. Let everybody know where they can go to get not only sacred places, because I'm excited to tear into this one, but your copies of esoteric, modern, beyond esoteric, modern esoteric, and future esoteric.
Well, they all come from my website, CCC Publishing, and this is just the last printed catalog we did. I also do a whole bunch of other authors, and there are some of my books and other books I don't even have here
Awesome.
on the table. But basically, go to CCC Publishing, .com is the website, and those copies that are ordered there go through my office, and I can sign them for people.
Awesome. Brad, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. And I
yeah.
appreciate you being able to make it here. It was such a surprise. Whenever I saw you when I saw you setting up yesterday, I was like, or earlier today, I was like, is that Brad Olson setting up? I didn't think he was here.
He wasn't supposed
so
to, but
I am
gifted me a VIP
I am so happy
seat.
that you're here, and I'm so happy that I got to meet you in
Yeah,
person.
you too.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
While you are online checking out everything from Brad Olson and CCC Publishing, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can go for all the episodes. That's where you can go to buy all of our guests' books, as well as find all of their videos from YouTube. Stay tuned through these commercial breaks, everybody. We will be back with our continuing coverage of Stairway to the Stars here in Las Vegas, Nevada at the fabulous Luxor. We'll be right back after this.